Hello friends, very good morning to all of you. So today we are in PF27 part 2 and we are going to discuss scope, what is scope in OAuth and scope management. So I'll just show you where you can just manage the scope, where you need to configure in PingFederate. So we can just discuss on those things and then we can jump to other section. So let's begin. So we are in PF27 part 2 and here we are going to discuss about scope and its management. So an important mechanism I will say in OAuth 2.0 is the scope. It basically represents a subset of access right tied to a specific authorization delegation. So it's basically nothing but it just help to limit the rights of an access token. That's the use of a scope. And how it is using, we can just understand like let me just go to system, and you can see you have an option of OAuth scopes. So here you can see you have an option of common scope group, exclusive scope groups, and default scope. Okay, so let's first, so basically common scopes are available to OAuth clients by default unless individual clients are configured to restrict common scopes. Scope can be declared as dynamic, which allows OAuth clients to request scopes where a component of the scope name is variable. So you can see here dynamic and static terms is coming. Okay, so what is this? Let's go to PingFederate. I'll just put this link in the description also. So what Ping is saying to us that leave these options for the above options. Just read this option: static scope and dynamic scopes. So what Ping is saying, as an authorization server, PingFederate supports the concept of static scope and dynamic scope. To define a static scope, use a text value such as read_bank_account. So you can just create this scope and you can just put the description. It's the static. To define a dynamic scope, what Ping is saying, use a text value with a variable component represented by a wildcard such as read_bank_account_txn:*. So to define a dynamic scope, use a text value with a variable component represented by a wildcard such as this. As illustrated, dynamic scope allow clients to request authorization using scope value with a variable component from one request to another. Okay, so you can define multiple here. Okay, now let's jump back to the PingFederate. Now you have these options. So let's try to create like first scope. Like let me click on add common scope. It will just ask like name, description, and dynamic is if it is dynamic or not. So we can just put a name for now. Like let's give address. And the description you can put like what is the purpose of this? So address access. Okay, and then you can click on save. Okay, this is one of the scope you created. Now let's create another. So like this you can just create for example, let's put admin, and description you can put like admin permissions. Okay, and then click on save. Like that, just click again and just create like few more, like click on edit. So if this is coming like client is looking for edit permission, or the resource owner I will say. So edit permissions. So basically this is scope you are going to pass in the authorization call. Like for example, once we discuss authorization code flow, I'll show you how you can pass that scope parameter or how other parameters being passed to the authorization server from the client. So in that only you need to define the scope, and as per that PingFed has to take action. Okay, so edit permissions like that, and then click on add common scope. Like let's put few more like email, and let's put email address access like this. This is just for testing. Okay, then you can give something like give OpenID also. We'll read more on OpenID once we complete the OAuth section, and you can just put OpenID connect login. Like if you by using this scope, like PingFederate can perform these things, right? So you are passing this scope value. So you have a you will get this permission like. Okay, so let's put more like phone. So you can just use this scope and you can get the value. Okay, you can perform the action basically. So phone number access. Okay, and sorry, spelling is wrong. Then just give like a few more, like let's put profile and just mention description as a profile access. Profile means like where you have the bunch of attributes. Okay, click on save. So these are the common script we defined for now, like address for address access, admin permissions, edit permissions, email address access, open ID, phone, and profile. Now let's go to common scope groups and let's create some scope group here. Like let's put as something. You have this attribute you defined here, right? These are the available scope we have. So let's define here like name. Let's put a name as a profile here also. Okay, description like user group user, I'll say detail attribute information. Okay, and then we have like you can see you have the available scope, then you can add few of them, like let's click address, email, then add phone. Okay, admin edit open ID is not required. Okay, so we added phone, email, address, like that. Okay, now let's click on save. So yeah, we have this. Okay, what it says, the scope name profile is already defined in common scopes. Okay, so we can define something else here, like let's mention profile 1. Yeah. Okay, so we have the scope group name also defined. Now you have the exclusive scope, and then you have the exclusive scope groups and default scope. Okay, so exclusive scopes are not available to OAuth client by default unless individual clients are configured to allow exclusive scope. So client has to allow this, then only you can configure. Scopes can be declared as dynamic, which allows OAuth clients to request scope where a component of the scope name is variable. So leave this exclusive scope and this part not required for us right now. Default scope is like profile that provide a default description to the PingFederate authorization approval screen. So once that consent part it says, so like if we can just let's put here our default permissions. If you are not putting that, so for example if you put like email here, so in this case like if your client wants email and you add email in the default scope, then in that case in the consent page user cannot unselect that, you cannot uncheck that value. Okay, so let's give here like the default scope as a default permissions only, don't define anything. Default permissions. Okay, so yeah, this is provided default description for the PingFed authorization approval screen. Okay, at the time of consent we can see like once we just cover that authorization code flow. Leave this. Okay, so this is about scope management, and is it saved or not? Yeah, it's saved now. Okay, let me do the cluster management. This is about scope and scope management, how you can define the scope, how you can manage the scope value, and then how client can send that value in the request, and then based on that, yeah, PingFed can take action, or the client can get those values. Okay, so we have the scope. Okay, so here all the scope define common scope, and then we have the group as a profile one where address, email, phone is added in the scope, and then yeah, we have the exclusive scope, and these are we are not in default scope, we have given default permissions. Okay, this is about scope, and let's jump to the next session and we can talk about grants in OAuth. Okay, in PF28 we'll talk about grants in OAuth, what all the grants we have, and then we can just go further in the grants session and with the testing in the Postman. Once we complete all those tests, then you have a good idea on all the grants, and you can easily integrate any application, or you can create any policies or access token manager mapping and all those. Okay, based on the requirement, or yeah. Okay, so thank you. If you have anything, please put in the comment section.